Jordan Webb was 41 years old when his wife had him arrested, so her boyfriend could move into the house he bought. For 12 years, Jordan built an electrical company from one truck, 2 tools belts, and 80-hour weeks. He was the man hospitals trusted with million-dollar systems. The man crews followed without question. Quiet men like Jordan are often mistaken for weak ones. Cassie made that mistake. She stood in the doorway, crying fake tears, while deputies put cuffs on him and read out a domestic complaint she had written that morning. She said he threatened her before leaving for work. 15 men could place Jordan on a commercial job site all day, but facts move slower than handcuffs. He spent 28 hours in a cell replaying every business trip, every missing payment, every time she called him ordinary while spending money he earned. 48 hours later, Cassie called sobbing from a store parking lot after her cards were declined, begging him for mercy. She still thought money was the only thing he could take back. She had no idea what was coming next. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The last conduit run was the cleanest Jordan had seen all week. He stood at the far end of the 4th-floor corridor and watched Marcus feed the final length of 3/4-inch EMT through the ceiling chase. Hands steady, angle perfect. 2 months ago, Marcus would have rushed this part, would have forced the bend instead of measuring it. Jordan had corrected him 3 times before the lesson finally held. Now he watched and said nothing. That was how you knew it had taken. "Good," Jordan said, when Marcus glanced back for confirmation. "Just the one word." Marcus nodded and went back to work. The Hargrove Medical Complex was 9 months of planning made physical. 42,000 square feet of future exam rooms, imaging suites, and surgical prep bays, all of it waiting on the nervous system that Jordan's crew was threading through its walls. Webb and Osei Electric had beaten out 2 larger firms for this contract. Jordan still kept the signed proposal in his truck's center console. Not out of pride, exactly. More like proof of a particular kind of math, the kind that said 12 years of showing up counted for something. He moved through the corridor, doing what he always did on a final walk, looking for what was almost right. Almost right was how accidents happened. Near the electrical room on the east end, he found what he was looking for. Devon, one of the newer hires, had spliced 2 conductors inside a pull box using a method that was fast and common, and technically against code. The connection would probably hold. Probably was not a word Jordan allowed in his buildings. He crouched beside Devon without a word, studied the splice for a moment, then looked up. "This medical equipment," Jordan said, his voice level. "When it's live and a surgeon is mid-procedure, what do you want that connection doing?" Devon's jaw tightened. "Holding." "Right. Show me you believe that." Devon pulled the splice and started over. Jordan stood, patted him once on the shoulder, and kept moving. His phone buzzed in his chest pocket. He pulled it out and smiled. Victor's daughter, Amara's birthday. He had written it on his hand that morning so he wouldn't let the day swallow it. He stepped out of the corridor into the stairwell, where the noise dropped enough to make a call decent. "Happy birthday, Amara." He kept his voice warm. "You 12 or 13 now. I can never keep up." She laughed on the other end. She was 11 and knew he was teasing her. They talked for 3 minutes. She told him about a science project involving volcanoes. He told her it sounded dangerous and excellent. When he hung up, he was still smiling. Victor appeared at the base of the stairs, tablet in hand, reviewing the punch list with the focus of a man who believed every detail was load-bearing. Victor had been Jordan's business partner for 11 years. They split the company neatly down the middle. Jordan owned the client relationships and the technical complexity. Victor owned the logistics and the crew. It worked because neither man wanted what the other had. "We're about 4 hours out," Victor said without looking up. Commissioning team is confirmed for Thursday. Good. Jordan leaned against the railing. Devon know what he did wrong? He does now. Victor glanced up. He's not a bad tech. Just lazy about the parts nobody inspects. We inspect everything. Victor smiled. That's why Devon knows what he did wrong. The drive home took 40 minutes on a good night. Jordan gave it 45, taking the long route down Meridian without quite deciding to. The windows were down. The air was warm and thick with the smell of cut grass and summer asphalt, and he let the truck settle into an easy speed. He thought about Cassie. He had been doing that more lately. Not the easy kind of thinking, where you run through the weekend plans or replay a good conversation. The other kind, the kind with small weights attached. She had stopped asking about his day somewhere around February. He had noticed and said nothing, told himself she was deep in a demanding quarter. Real estate moved in cycles, and she rode them hard. He respected that about her, always had. But there was the perfume, light and unfamiliar on her jacket by the front door, 2 Tuesdays in a row. Something with cedar in it. He didn't know the name of it. It wasn't hers. He had told himself department store samples were everywhere. Clients wore strong scents. She hugged people all day long. That was the business. And the Charlotte conferences. March and again in May. She had come home from both trips quieter than she left, which he had read as exhaustion. But she usually came home from trips full of small stories, the bad hotel coffee, the colleague who talked too much at dinner. She had brought none of that back. Both times she had come home, kissed his cheek, and gone to bed. He had been patient. That was what he told himself. Patient. His phone rang from the cup holder. Unknown number. He almost let it go. He answered. Mr. Webb. The voice was male, unhurried, carrying the flat, professional tone of someone who delivered hard news for a living. This is Detective Arlen Pruitt with the County Sheriff's Office. We've received a domestic disturbance report at your residence. Your wife has submitted a statement alleging that you threatened her before leaving for work this morning. A short pause. We'd like you to come in voluntarily. If we don't hear from you in the next hour, I'll be issuing a warrant. Jordan stared at the road ahead. The asphalt ran straight and long into the darkening evening. His hands stayed exactly where they were on the wheel. His breathing did not change. I'll come in, he said. The county sheriff's office smelled like burned coffee and old carpet. Jordan walked through the front entrance at 7:42 in the evening and told the woman at the desk his name before she could ask. Detective Pruitt met him in the lobby. He was a compact man in his mid-50s, gray at the temples, with the careful eyes of someone who had long since stopped being surprised by people. He shook Jordan's hand and led him down a short hallway to an interview room that held a table, 3 chairs, and a security camera mounted high in the corner. Jordan sat. He folded his hands on the table. He waited. Appreciate you coming in, Pruitt said, settling across from him. He had a notepad and a manila folder, which he did not open yet. Tell me about this morning. I left the house at 5:50, Jordan said. Cassie was asleep. I didn't wake her. I made coffee, poured it in a travel mug, and drove to the Hargrove Medical Complex on Ridgeline Avenue. I was on site by 6:30. My crew was already there. I didn't leave the building until 4:45 this afternoon. Pruitt made a note. You have people who can confirm that? 15 of them. Jordan pulled out his phone. You want the list now or you want to keep talking first? Pruitt almost smiled. Now is fine. Jordan set the phone on the table and read out names and numbers. Pruitt wrote each one without rushing. When Jordan reached the end, the detective looked up. Did you argue with your wife this morning? Yesterday evening? Anything recent? No. Any history of physical altercation? No. Have you ever threatened her? In any form, verbal, written, anything? Jordan held the detective's eyes. No, I have never threatened my wife. In 9 years, I have never raised my hand to her. I've never raised my voice past what two people do when they're frustrated with each other." He paused. "I don't know what prompted this call. I genuinely don't." Pruitt looked at him for a long moment. Then he opened the folder. "She submitted a written statement," he said. "Signed and dated this morning." He didn't slide it across, just let the fact of it sit between them. "Protocol requires we hold you while we verify." Jordan nodded once. "I understand." The holding cell had a concrete bench, a steel toilet, and a light in the ceiling that never changed. Jordan sat on the bench with his back against the wall and his feet flat on the floor. He did not pace. He did not demand to speak to anyone. He simply sat, and he let the silence do what silence does when you finally stop filling it. He thought about Cassie. This time, he did not rationalize. He let the memories come back the way they actually were, not the way he had smoothed them out to be. The Charlotte conference in March. She had packed a weekend bag on Thursday evening. He had asked what hotel she was staying at. Casual. No suspicion behind it. She had said the name of a place without hesitating. But when he had offered to look up the restaurant situation on his phone, she had said she already had it handled. She had turned away and gone back to folding clothes. He had let it go. 2 months later, she had brought up the joint account. Sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open, tax documents spread around her. She had said it in an offhand way. Something about the structure of their shared assets and how it might actually benefit them. From a tax position, to separate the accounts, run them parallel, keep the business cleaner. He had said he would think about it. He hadn't thought about it. A week later, she brought it up again. The same light tone, the same reasonable framing. He had said they should probably talk to someone before making changes like that. She had dropped it. He hadn't thought about it again, until now. And then, the guest room. Last April, a Saturday. He had been in Raleigh for a supplier meeting. He came home Sunday evening to find the guest room freshly painted, a warm gray, clean and new. Cassie had said she got tired of the old color and found someone on short notice. He had looked at the work. It was careful, professional. He had said it looked good. He had not thought about why she needed the guest room done while he was out of town, and not before, and not after, but precisely then. He thought about it now. He looked at the ceiling of the cell. The light buzzed faintly, the sound of a filament running too hot. He recognized it the way he recognized all electrical sounds, automatically, without effort. He got up and went to the phone. Aunt Delphine picked up on the second ring. "It's me," he started. "I'm at the—" "I know," she said, steady, certain. Like she had been sitting by that phone waiting for it to ring. "I've been waiting for this call." Jordan pressed his forehead briefly against the wall above the phone, just for a second. Then he straightened, nodded at nothing, and said, "Okay." He returned to the bench. He sat back down. His jaw was tight. The muscle along the side of it worked once, and then went still. He stopped refusing to see what he had been refusing to see. He let it in. It didn't break him. It just settled, like a diagnosis finally spoken aloud. He stared at the far wall and began making a list. The paperwork took 40 minutes. Jordan sat in a plastic chair near the processing desk and waited while a clerk printed forms, stamped things, and slid documents across a counter without making conversation. That was fine. Jordan had nothing to say. Detective Pruitt appeared once, briefly, in the doorway of the hall that led back to the interview room. He looked at Jordan. Jordan looked back. Pruitt gave a short nod, the kind that meant alibi confirmed and I'm sorry about your night, and I can't say either of those things out loud all at once. And then he was gone. When the final form was signed, and Jordan had his phone and his wallet and his keys back in his hands, the processing officer, young, red-faced, moving too fast, said, "You're free to go, Mr. Webb. No charges have been filed." "I know," Jordan said. Thank you for your time." The officer glanced up, then back down. Jordan walked out through the glass doors and into the morning. The sun was low and white. The air smelled like cut grass and car exhaust, and the particular freshness that only exists at 7 in the morning. Jordan stood on the sidewalk for a moment, not moving. He breathed in. He breathed out. Then he opened his phone and requested a rideshare. When the driver asked where he was headed, Jordan gave Aunt Delphine's address. Not his own. Delphine's house was a cream-colored craftsman on a quiet street lined with oak trees. She had lived there for 22 years. The front porch had 2 chairs on it that never moved, and the door opened before Jordan could knock. She looked at him the way only someone who has been waiting through a long night can look at a person. No drama in it. No performance. Just taking inventory, checking that he was upright, that his eyes were clear, that the thing inside him that made him him was still intact. Apparently it was, because she stepped aside and led him to the kitchen. The coffee was already made, 2 cups on the table. She had known. Jordan sat down and wrapped both hands around the mug. He didn't drink yet. He just held it. Delphine sat across from him, folded her hands, and told him what she had seen. Twice, she said. 2 separate occasions over the past year. A restaurant called Beaumont's, 4 blocks from her church. The kind of place with cloth napkins and a lunch crowd of business people who thought a $40 entree meant something about them. The first time, she had been leaving with a friend and seen Cassie at a table near the window. A man across from her. Delphine had not thought much of it. Cassie worked in real estate. Lunches were part of the job. The second time was different. She had been inside, seen them before they saw her. Cassie's hand was resting on the man's wrist, not reaching for something. Resting. Easy and familiar. The way you only touch someone you have already decided belongs to you. She described the man the way she described all men who were more performance than substance. Expensive suit. Soft in the middle. Laughing too loud. She paused. The kind of man who needs everyone in the room to think he's doing well. Jordan looked at her. "What's his name?" "Prentice Holt. He's a mortgage broker. I asked around after the second time." She said it without apology. She had been carrying this, and she had chosen when to put it down. "How long ago was the second time?" 7 months. Jordan nodded. "Did she see you?" "No." He picked up his coffee and drank, set it down, looked at the table for a moment. Then he reached for his phone. He called Victor first. 4 seconds of ringing. "Pull everything on the business accounts," Jordan said when Victor picked up. "Every statement you can access. And drive past the house. Tell me what you see." Victor didn't ask why. "On it," he said, and hung up. Jordan dialed the bank next. He was calm and precise. Gave his account number, his security verification, his full name. He told the representative that he had reason to believe unauthorized activity had occurred on both the joint checking account and the home equity line of credit. He requested an immediate administrative freeze on both accounts pending a fraud investigation. The representative put him on a brief hold, came back, confirmed the freeze would be in place within the hour. Jordan thanked her and ended the call. Delphine said nothing. She refilled her own coffee and sat back down. 12 minutes later, Victor called back. His voice was flat and deliberate, the voice of a man choosing each word the way you choose your footing on unsteady ground. "There's a U-Haul in your driveway, Jordan. A man is carrying boxes inside. Cassie's on the porch. She's telling him where to put things." Jordan was quiet for 1 second. "Keep watching." He set the phone on the table. He looked at his coffee. 22 minutes passed. He and Delphine did not fill them with talk. Then Cassie called. He let it ring twice. Then he answered and said nothing. He just waited. Her voice came through already fraying at the edges. Not the composed, image-managed voice she wore in public, but something rawer beneath it. She had tried her card at a home goods store. Declined. She had pulled up the joint account on her phone. Frozen. She had called the bank, and they had given her nothing but a reference number and a department name. Jordan. The second syllable of his name cracked slightly. Please, whatever you're doing, stop. I need you to unfreeze the accounts. I just need… Jordan, please. He let the silence sit for 5 full seconds. Not from cruelty, from precision. Then, quietly, the voice of a man who had already decided everything. Get a lawyer, Cassie. He ended the call. Delphine reached across the table and refilled his coffee without a word. Jordan set his phone down. He stared at the middle of the table for a moment, not at anything specific. When he spoke, it was almost to himself. She thought the hard part was getting me out of the house. He looked up at his aunt. She hasn't seen the hard part yet. Jordan slept. That was the thing that would have surprised Cassie most, if she had known. No pacing. No staring at the ceiling. He was asleep before 10, in the small guest room at the back of Delphine's house, in a bed with a quilt that smelled like cedar and fabric softener. He slept the way a man sleeps when he has made his decisions and has nothing left to argue with himself about. He was up at 6. Delphine was already in the kitchen. Eggs on the stove, toast in the rack, the radio on low. Some morning program she never watched, but always had playing for the company of it. She put a plate in front of him and sat down with her own coffee. They ate without rushing. Outside, the oak trees were still, and the light was coming in at a low angle that made everything look clean. When Jordan finished, he carried his plate to the sink, rinsed it, and set it in the rack. Then he picked up his phone and called Nadia Osi. She answered on the second ring. Jordan, I need a full forensic review, he said. Joint checking, joint savings, the home equity line, my personal accounts, any account that falls under the marital estate that she had access to. He paused. I need to know everything. There was a brief silence on her end, not hesitation, just the sound of someone shifting into a different mode. Send me everything you can access digitally, she said. Encrypt it. I'll send you the file link. Give me what you have and I'll tell you what it means. No questions, no commentary. Just the next step. Thank you, Nadia. Don't thank me yet, she said. Send the files. He spent the next 2 hours at Delphine's kitchen table with his laptop open. Joint checking. He downloaded 32 months of statements. Joint savings, 16 months. The home equity line of credit. He had to call the bank's digital access line to unlock the full history. But he had the credentials and the patience. And 20 minutes later, he had everything. He zipped the folder, dropped it into the encrypted link Nadia had sent, and hit upload. Then he drove to Victor's office. Webb and Osei operated out of a converted bay in an industrial park on the east side. Modest from the outside, organized on the inside. Pegboard walls with tools in their correct places. A whiteboard with the crew schedule mapped out in Victor's block handwriting. A folding table near the back that served as the unofficial accounting station. Victor was waiting for him. He had the business statements spread across the table before Jordan even sat down. Bank records, payroll summaries, vendor invoices, the company credit account. 3 years of documentation laid out with the kind of thoroughness that only came from someone who was angry and needed somewhere to put it. They went through it together. Methodically. Line by line. The business was clean. Cassie's name appeared nowhere. She had no access, no joint authorization, no digital credentials attached to any Webb and Osei account. Whatever she had done, she had not touched this. The company Jordan had spent 12 years building was intact. Victor leaned back in his chair when they finished, and let out a slow breath. Good, he said. The word carried about 10 different things inside it. Jordan nodded. He closed the last folder. They were still sitting there when Nadia called. She did not bury the lead. She opened a joint account, Nadia said, with Apprentice Holt, 8 months ago. I found it through the transfer patterns on your HELOC. It took me a while because she was careful. Small draws, spaced out. Never more than $300 at a time. Never enough to hit your notification threshold. Jordan was quiet. She started pulling from the equity line 14 months ago, Nadia continued. The early transfers were smaller. I think she was testing the system first. Then they became regular. The amounts are all documented. I've matched every transfer to a corresponding deposit in the joint account she held with Holt. Total? Jordan said. $34,000. Victor went very still across the table. 14 months, Nadia said. This wasn't impulsive, Jordan. She had a system. She knew your threshold settings, which means she had studied them. Every single draw was designed to stay invisible. A pause. I'll have the full report ready by tomorrow morning. I'm structuring it for legal use. Thank you, he said. I'll call when it's done. She came herself the following afternoon, drove over to Victor's with a printed summary in a manila folder, and set it on the kitchen table. She sat down across from Jordan, folded her hands, and waited while he opened it. The numbers were clean and devastating. Dates, amounts, account numbers, transfer confirmations. 14 months of entries that told a story with no room for interpretation. Victor sat beside Jordan. His jaw was tight. His hands were flat on the table, and he was looking at the page the way a man looks at something he wants to lift and throw. Nadia slid the document the last inch across the table toward Jordan. Her voice was quiet, clinical. She didn't just cheat, she said. She was building a parallel life, using your money to build it. Jordan read every line, every number, every date. Then he folded the document carefully along its original crease, slid it into the inside pocket of his jacket, and looked at Nadia. Good, he said. I need this notarized. The attorney's name was Gerald Fitch. He had a small office on the 3rd floor of a building downtown. Nothing flashy. Dark wood shelves, a desk that had seen 20 years of hard use, and 2 chairs across from it that were comfortable in the way of things chosen for function rather than impression. A man who had done this long enough to stop performing. Delphine had worked alongside him for 11 years at a firm that no longer existed. She had called him the night before. Jordan did not know what she said, but when he arrived at 9 in the morning, Gerald Fitch was already at his desk with a yellow legal pad and a full cup of coffee, and he stood when Jordan walked in. Jordan set the manila folder on the desk and sat down. Fitch spent 12 minutes reading. He did not rush, and he did not speak. He turned pages carefully, made 2 small notes on his legal pad, and read certain sections twice. When he finished, he closed the folder and looked at Jordan with the level expression of a man who has seen a great deal and is not easily rattled. Your name is primary on the deed, Fitch said. She is listed as secondary. That matters. He tapped the folder. Every draw on the equity line is tied to the property. Every transfer your accountant documented is traceable and dated. Under marital property law, what she did qualifies as financial misconduct. We can argue it as marital waste, that she deliberately diverted shared equity for her own benefit and the benefit of a third party. He paused. $34,000 over 14 months isn't a lapse in judgment. It's a pattern. Courts respond to patterns. Jordan nodded once. The divorce filing will move to protect the business first, Fitch continued. Webb and O.C. is structured as a partnership. Her claim there is limited, but we want that wall built clean and early. From there, we document the unauthorized transfers and position them as an offset against her share of the marital estate. He set down his pen. In practical terms, that means she walks away with significantly less than she planned. Possibly nothing from the house at all, once the offset is calculated. What about the arrest? Jordan said. Fitch's expression shifted just slightly. Not a smile. Something more contained. She filed a written statement alleging you made threats, he said. You were on a job site with 15 people. The alibi is not just solid. It is perfect. She will not be able to explain that statement in a deposition without causing herself serious damage. He folded his hands on the desk. A false police report is grounds for a civil claim. Defamation. Malicious prosecution. We file that separately, run it alongside the divorce proceedings, and let her attorney explain to her what defending both cases simultaneously is going to cost. You called it a gift, Jordan said. I did. I call it leverage. Fitch looked at him for a moment. Then he picked up his pen and wrote something on his pad. Either way, he said, she handed it to you. They spent another 40 minutes going through the structure. Jordan asked precise questions and listened to the full answers before asking the next one. He left with a clear picture of the road ahead. Not a guarantee, but a map, a direction. That was enough. Delphine was waiting at her kitchen table when he got back that afternoon. She had her phone in front of her and her reading glasses pushed up into her hair, the position she settled into when she had been working. There was a notepad next to her elbow with 3 lines of handwriting on it, and she tapped it once when Jordan sat down. You remember I mentioned a woman named Sandra, Delphine said. Works in Cassie's realty office. We've been in the same church auxiliary for going on 9 years. I remember, Jordan said. Sandra never liked Prentice Holt. Delphine said this as simple fact, the way you'd note the weather. He came around the office twice last year. She thought he was loud, and she thought he was hollow, and she said so to the people she trusted. She slid the notepad toward Jordan. I called her this morning. He looked at the notes. 3 lines, written in Delphine's careful upright hand. Prentice Holt. Mortgage application denied. Approx. 4 months ago. Property on Whitmore Len. Credit disqualified. Cannot purchase independently. He read it once, then again. His credit is gone, Delphine said. Whatever he had, he spent it somewhere before this. He cannot buy a home on his own. A bank already told him so. She let that land, then added, he didn't end up in your house because Cassie invited him. He ended up in your house because he had nowhere else to go. He needed somewhere to land. She needed someone to make her feel like she was still moving forward. They made a deal. She said the last sentence without heat, just the fact of it. Jordan sat with that for a moment. The whole shape of it became clear in a different way now. Not just a betrayal, a transaction. 2 people who needed something, and his life had been the most convenient solution available. That evening, he sat at the small desk in the guest room with his legal pad and updated his list. 13 calls from Cassie across 2 days, every one of them saved. He opened his voicemail and played the most recent one. Left that afternoon, while he was in with Fitch. Her voice had changed. The fractures he'd heard 2 days ago were gone, patched over with something harder. Jordan, I don't know what you're planning, but you need to understand that this house is mine too, and I have rights. He played it again, all the way through. Then he saved it, set his phone face down on the desk, and picked up his pen. The rental unit was small and clean. 1 bedroom, a kitchen that got good morning light, and a bathroom with a window that looked out over a narrow strip of yard. Victor's cousin had asked no questions when Jordan paid the first month in cash. The bed was firm. The walls were quiet. Jordan had slept 6 hours. Solid. He was up before 6. He made coffee in a small pot he had picked up on the way over. One of the few things he had taken any time to buy. He set his legal pad on the kitchen table beside the mug, smoothed the page flat, and read through the list from top to bottom. He was not reading it to process. He was reading it to sequence. There is a difference. An electrician does not fix a fault by pulling wires at random. You map the circuit first. You find the source. You work in order. Jordan had built the map. Now he was ready to work. He called the bank at 8:15. He had already prepared what he needed to say, not scripted, just organized. He spoke with the Fraud Investigations Unit directly, identified himself as the primary account holder, and formally submitted Nadia's notarized forensic accounting summary as supporting documentation for the existing administrative freeze. He referenced the account numbers, the specific transfer dates, and the total amount diverted. $34,000. 14 months. Incremental and deliberate. The representative placed him on hold twice. When she came back the second time, her tone had shifted. More careful, more formal. Mr. Webb, based on the documentation you've provided, we are escalating this to a full fraud investigation. The freeze on both accounts will remain in place indefinitely pending the outcome of that investigation. Thank you, Jordan said. He wrote one word on his legal pad. Bank, done. He called Fitch at 9. I'm ready to move forward, Jordan said. Fitch did not ask if he was sure. He simply said, I'll have the filing prepared by end of day and submitted tomorrow morning. They confirmed the structure one more time. Webb and OC protected first. The HELOC draws classified as marital waste. The false police report entered formally into the record. Jordan listened, confirmed each piece, and thanked him. He hung up and wrote another line on the pad. Divorce filed. He sat for a moment, looking at those two words. He had built a marriage over 9 years, built it the same way he had built the business, carefully, with both hands, putting in more than he took out. 2 words on a legal pad was not how he had imagined it ending. He picked up his coffee, drank it. Then he turned to the next item on the list. He called Prentice Holt at 2 in the afternoon. Prentice answered on the 3rd ring. His voice carried that particular brightness of a man who does not recognize the number and assumes it is opportunity. This is Prentice. Prentice, Jordan said. This is Jordan Webb. A pause. Not long. 2 seconds, maybe 3. But it was the kind of pause that says everything about the person taking it. Jordan. Prentice's tone reassembled itself quickly, reaching for something between casual and controlled. I think there's probably a lot we should... I'm not calling to discuss anything, Jordan said. His voice was even and quiet, the same register he used when explaining a job scope to a new client. I'm calling to give you information. You can do what you want with it. Prentice said nothing. I know who you are, Jordan said. I know what you owe. I know what you can't afford. And I know what you were trying to use to fix that. He did not pause for effect. He simply moved to the next sentence. I'm calling to tell you the foundation is gone. You've moved into a house that is about to become a courtroom exhibit. Now wait a minute. Prentice's voice rose, the casualness cracking off it like paint in the heat. You don't get to call me and... Prentice. The name stopped him. I'm not asking you anything, Jordan said. I'm not threatening you. I'm informing you. There's a fraud investigation open with the bank. There's a divorce filing going in tomorrow morning. And there is a civil claim already in motion, based on a police report your girlfriend filed against a man who was on a job site with 15 people. He let that settle for exactly 1 second. You wanted a foundation. That was never yours to stand on. A shuffling sound on the line. Muffled voices. Then Prentice, lowered, covering the phone. It's him. Just let me. More shuffling. Then Cassie's voice, reaching toward the phone. Tell her to call her attorney, Jordan said. And get your boxes. He ended the call. He set the phone face up on the table and looked at it for a moment. Prentice had expected a man coming apart at the seams. He had not prepared for a man who had already finished the job. Victor called at 6:47. I need you to hear something, Victor said. No greeting. Jordan leaned forward. Go ahead. I was checking Prentice's background. Professional background. Victor's voice was controlled, but just barely. 6 months ago, he used his mortgage broker credentials to pull a soft inquiry on your personal credit profile. Yours, Jordan. Not a joint account, your personal file. Jordan was quiet. That's not legal, Victor said. Not even close. He had no permissible purpose. That's a federal violation, Fair Credit Reporting Act. Jordan reached for his pen and legal pad. He wrote it down in full. Prentice Holt, FCRA violation, federal. Unauthorized credit inquiry, personal profile, approx. 6 months ago. He looked at the list now. 3 distinct lines of attack, each one independent, each one documented, each one building on the work that came before it. The civil claim for the false arrest, the marital fraud case tied to the HELOC draws, the federal FCRA violation. He set the pen down. He looked at the list for a long moment. Then, quietly, in the stillness of the small kitchen with the evening light going thin through the window, Jordan Webb allowed himself one slow, full exhale. The gym was nearly empty at 5:30 in the morning. That was why Jordan liked it. He moved through his workout the same way he moved through everything. No rush, no wasted motion. Bench press, pull-ups, dumbbell rows. He had been coming here every morning for the past 3 days, and each session felt less like exercise and more like maintenance, keeping the machine running, keeping the mind clear. He was not thinking about Cassie. That was the thing people would not understand if he tried to explain it. He was not suppressing it. There was simply nothing left to feel about her that he had not already converted into something useful. He racked the bar, sat up, and breathed. A man 2 benches over glanced at him. The kind of look that says, "You look like you've got something on your mind." Jordan gave him a short nod and reached for his water. He was fine. He was sleeping 6 hours a night and eating actual meals, and his mind was sharp in a way it had not been in months, maybe longer. He had read somewhere once that clarity was not the absence of pain. It was just what happened when you stopped fighting the truth. He believed that now. He showered at the gym, stopped at the same diner he had been going to since Tuesday, and ate eggs and toast at the counter with the newspaper open beside his plate. He did not check his phone until he had finished eating. There were 3 messages, none from Cassie. He had not spoken to her since the kitchen table at Delphine's, since those 5 seconds of silence and the 4 words that ended the call. He paid the check and drove to Fitch's office. Marcus Fitch's office was on the 4th floor of a building downtown. The kind of office that communicated competence without performing it. Clean desk, good chairs, a window that looked out over the street below. Fitch had the documents spread across the conference table when Jordan arrived. Jordan sat down, set his jacket over the back of the chair, and leaned forward. They went through everything. The divorce filing was already submitted. The structure was clean. The HELOC draws formally classified as marital waste and financial misconduct. The false police report entered into the official record. The fraud investigation at the bank was running independent of the filing, which strengthened both cases by keeping them distinct. Jordan had 3 legal avenues, and none of them depended on the others. "What I want to talk about today," Fitch said, "is the meeting." Jordan nodded. Fitch explained the framing. He would contact Cassie's attorney, assuming she had retained one by now, and invite her to a pre-proceeding discussion at his office. Not a deposition, not a formal hearing, just a conversation before things moved further down the legal road. It was a common enough request that it would not raise flags. "And if she hasn't retained representation yet?" Jordan asked. Fitch folded his hands on the table. "Then she'll come alone. And knowing what I know about how she has conducted herself so far," he paused, choosing the words, "I think there's a reasonable chance she comes alone either way. Someone who has managed situations with confidence for this long does not easily accept that she is no longer managing this one." Jordan thought about that, about the 14 months of careful, patient maneuvering, about the small transfers that never crossed the threshold, about the police report filed with a written statement against a man who had 15 witnesses to his exact location. Cassie was smart. She was also completely convinced that her intelligence was the most important variable in any room she entered. "She'll come alone," Jordan said. Fitch nodded once. "Then we let her." Cassie called Aunt Delphine at 2:30 that afternoon. Delphine was in her kitchen, the same table, the same good light, when the phone rang. She looked at the name on the screen for a moment, then she answered. She did not say much. She did not need to. Cassie was already talking. It came out in a rush. The marriage had been one-sided for years. Jordan had never really seen her. She had felt invisible inside that house. She had tried to tell him, and he never listened. She had done what she had to do. Anyone in her position would have understood. Delphine listened. She was good at that. 30 years in law had made her very good at listening to people explain why what they had done was not what it looked like. When Cassie finally stopped, she asked, "Do you know where he is? I need to know if he's okay." Delphine looked out the kitchen window at the narrow strip of yard behind the house. "He's exactly where he needs to be," she said. "When he's ready, you'll hear from him. Not before." She hung up. Back in Fitch's office, with the last of the afternoon light coming through the window, Fitch slid the final set of documents across the table and asked, "Do you want to give her any advance notice of what the meeting will cover? What she's actually walking into?" Jordan looked up from the page. "She had 14 months to tell me the truth," he said. "She used that time differently." He picked up the pen and signed where Fitch indicated. Jordan arrived 10 minutes early. He wore dark slacks and a simple gray shirt. Nothing pressed to impress, nothing chosen for effect. He set his jacket over the back of his chair, accepted the coffee Fitch's assistant offered, and sat down. He did not check his phone. He did not rehearse what he was going to say. He had already said it 100 times inside his own head, and each time it came out the same way. Flat, clear, and final. Aunt Delphine was already in the corner when he arrived. She had gotten there before him, which did not surprise him. She was wearing the dark blue blazer she saved for occasions that required her to be taken seriously. She had a small notepad on her knee and a pen she would likely never use. She was there to see, to remember, to make sure Cassie knew that Jordan had not come alone. Fitch sat at the head of the table, his reading glasses on, the documents organized in front of him with the precision of a man who had done this many times and understood that order was its own kind of pressure. In the center of the table, directly in front of the empty chair across from Jordan, sat a sealed manila envelope. Nobody touched it. Nobody mentioned it. They waited. Cassie arrived 7 minutes late. She had dressed carefully. That much was plain. A fitted blazer the color of charcoal. Her hair pulled back smooth. The kind of outfit that said, "I am composed, and I am reasonable, and this is just a conversation." She walked in carrying her composure like something she had packed that morning and was not entirely sure had survived the trip. She stopped when she saw Delphine. It was only a half-second, just long enough to register. Then she moved to the empty chair and sat down, setting her bag on the floor beside her, smoothing the front of her blazer with both hands. She looked at Jordan. Jordan looked back. He let her settle. Let the silence sit long enough to be uncomfortable. Then he folded his hands on the table and spoke at the same volume he used to tell a crew member to check their ground wire. "I'm going to talk. You're going to listen. And then the attorney is going to give you a packet explaining what happens next." He paused. "None of what I'm about to say is a negotiation." Cassie opened her mouth. He continued before she could use it. He went through it in order. The affair, when it began, based on Nadia's financial trace, which put the first HELOC draw 14 months ago. Prentice Holt, his name, his profession, the mortgage denial, the destroyed credit score, the fact that he could not purchase a home independently and had needed somewhere to land. The joint account Cassie opened with Prentice 8 months ago. The $34,000 moved from the home equity line in increments small enough to stay quiet across 14 months into a life she was building with someone else using money that belonged to both of them. He did not raise his voice. He did not speed up. He laid each piece on the table the way he would lay out a wiring diagram, one line at a time, each one connected to the next. Then he got to the police report. You filed a written statement against a man who had 15 witnesses confirming his location all morning. He kept his eyes on her. The civil claim based on that filing has already been submitted. Something moved across Cassie's face. Not quite surprise. She had known this was possible. But hearing it named, out loud, in this room, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. And Prentice, Jordan continued, used his mortgage broker license to pull my personal credit profile 6 months ago, without my knowledge or consent. That is a federal violation. There is a separate complaint filed for that. Cassie shook her head. Small at first, then more firmly. Jordan, that's not... She stopped, started again. I was going to tell you. He said nothing. I was going to tell you, she said again, as if repetition would give it weight. Things were bad between us for a long time. You know that. You have to know that. He waited. Her eyes went shiny. Her jaw tightened against it, but the tears came anyway. Too quick, down her left cheek. She pressed her lips together. And then, suddenly, the tears were gone, and something harder replaced them. You think you're so smart. Her voice came out low and sharp. You think you planned all of this, like you're the only person who gets to decide how this ends? Jordan did not lean forward. He did not move at all. He simply waited until her voice stopped bouncing off the walls, until the room was quiet again. And then he said, I think I'm accurate. There's a difference. He let that land. Then he explained what the financial outcome looked like. The unauthorized draws classified as marital waste. Her share of the marital estate offset against the amount diverted. The civil claim running alongside it. The number she had been calculating, the exit she had built and furnished and planned, was not the number she was going to receive. It was possible, Fitch's filing made clear, that she would receive nothing from the house at all. Cassie turned her head and looked at Delphine. It was an instinct, a reach for something softer than what this room contained. Her eyes asked a question her mouth did not say. Delphine looked back at her and shook her head. Once, slowly, the way you close a door that is never going to open again. Jordan stood. He pushed his chair in. He picked up his jacket from the back of it. He looked at Cassie one last time. Not with anger, not with satisfaction, just with the steady, clear eyes of a man who has finished a job. I'm not here because I'm angry, he said. I stopped being angry around day 2. I'm here because you made choices that required consequences. He pulled his jacket on, one arm, then the other. And I'm the one delivering them. He walked out. Cassie did not move. She sat with her hands in her lap and her eyes fixed on the sealed envelope in front of her. And the room was very quiet. And the only thing left of Jordan Webb was the empty chair across the table and the sound of the door settling shut behind him. The new job site was a 4-story office building on the east side of the city, a gutting and rewire from the basement panels up. Jordan had walked it twice the week before, mapped the sequence in his head, and laid the schedule out with Victor the night before the crew showed. He knew this building the way he knew all of them. Every problem had a source. You just had to be willing to trace it. He was on the 2nd floor when his phone buzzed the first time. He checked it between runs. A short message from Fitch, his attorney. He read it, slipped the phone back into his pocket, and kept moving. The bank had concluded its fraud investigation. The unauthorized HELOC draws, all 14 months of them, $34,000 moved in small, careful increments, had been ruled improper. Cassie was personally liable for full repayment. The freeze on the accounts would remain in place until the civil proceedings resolved or the debt was satisfied. Jordan read that message twice. Then he went back to work. The second message came around noon, while he was eating a sandwich in the cab of his truck with the windows down. Fitch again. Cassie's attorney had reached out requesting a conversation about restructuring the divorce settlement terms. Jordan called Fitch back. Fitch read him the message in full, and then Jordan told him what to say, and Fitch said he'd handle it. The response went back in 3 sentences. My client has no interest in restructuring. He's interested in resolution. On the terms filed. Jordan finished his sandwich. He watched 2 of his guys walking back from the food truck across the street, laughing about something, paper cups in hand. He thought about nothing in particular for about 30 seconds. Then he got out of the truck and went back inside. The 3rd message arrived the following week. Prentice Holt had retained an attorney to respond to the FCRA complaint. The legal fees alone, Fitch noted, would put significant pressure on a man with no financial runway. Jordan had expected this. A man like Prentice did not surrender. He deflected, delayed, and performed confidence he did not have until the performance became too expensive to continue. Jordan had seen the type before. Not in courtrooms, on job sites. Men who talked loud about what they were going to build, and then went quiet when it came time to pour the foundation. He saved the message and kept working. 12 days after the conference room meeting, a neighbor 2 doors down from Jordan's old house, a retired postal worker named Mr. Aldridge, who had lived on that block for 22 years, sent Jordan a text message. He had Jordan's number from a block association message thread, and he used it simply and without commentary. That U-Haul came back today. He loaded it up and left. Thought you should know. Jordan stared at the message for a moment. He typed back, "Thank you, Mr. Aldridge." He set the phone down on the work table beside him. The furniture that had arrived so triumphantly, boxes carried with the energy of a man moving into something new, had left the same way it came, quietly, with no ceremony. The neighbors had watched and said nothing, and that silence was its own kind of verdict. The news about Cassie's job came through Nadia, who had stayed close to the paper trail. The civil complaint was public record, and Cassie's realty firm, seeing her name attached to court filings in a fraud and false report case, placed her on administrative leave. The internal review that followed took less than a week. Her work email, which the firm retained access to as a matter of policy, contained what Nadia described in a single flat sentence. Transfers coordinated during business hours from her work device. It was documented. It was damaging. And it had been sitting in a company server the entire time, waiting for someone to look. Cassie was terminated. A few days after that, Nadia called Jordan with one more item. She had kept digging, not because Jordan asked her to, but because Nadia finished what she started. Prentice owed money to a former business partner. A failed investment, years old, that had never fully resolved. That creditor had seen Prentice's name surface in the public FCRA complaint. He had called his own attorney. A separate claim had been filed. Prentice was now fighting on 2 legal fronts at the same time, with no savings, no cushion, and a mortgage broker's license sitting under regulatory review. Jordan thanked Nadia and told her to add the billable hours to the invoice. The voicemail came on a Thursday. Jordan was in his truck after the crew had cleared out for the day. The job site quiet behind him. The city doing its early evening thing. Traffic thinning, light going gold. His phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Unknown number, but he recognized the last 4 digits. He had seen them enough times. He pressed play and held the phone to his ear. Cassie's voice was different. Not the carefully managed version, not the wounded version, not the sharp edge she had reached for in Fitch's conference room. This was something stripped down and tired, and it carried the particular weight of a person who has finally stopped arguing with themselves. Jordan. A pause. I'm not calling to ask for anything. I needed you to hear me say it. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. I know that. Another pause. Longer. I didn't think you'd fight. I thought I knew what you'd do. I was wrong. The message ended. Jordan sat with it for a moment. The truck was warm. The light outside was fading slowly from gold to a dull orange. He could hear the faint sound of traffic a few blocks over. He saved the voicemail. He set the phone face down on the seat. Then he started the truck and drove to Aunt Delphine's for dinner. The driveway was short and slightly curved, flanked on one side by a row of young oak trees that Delphine had declared non-negotiable during the first walkthrough. Jordan pulled in and cut the engine. He sat for a moment with the window down, listening to the neighborhood settle into evening. A lawnmower 2 streets over, a kid on a bicycle, somebody's radio carrying a gospel station from an open window. He had driven past this block probably a dozen times over the years. Never stopped. Just noticed it the way you notice something that fits, without being able to say exactly why. Aunt Delphine was on the porch already, crouched over the long garden bed that ran the length of the front railing. She had her good gloves on, the ones she claimed were for rough work, but kept cleaner than most people kept their Sunday shoes. She did not look up when he pulled in. She was examining something at the base of a rosemary plant, with the focused expression of a woman conducting an investigation. "You're late," she said, as he came up the porch steps. "By 4 minutes." She pressed the soil down around the plant and sat back on her heels. "I watered the tomatoes." "I saw." She looked up at him then, briefly, the way she had been looking at him his whole life, like she was checking a measurement and confirming it was still true. Then she nodded at the front door and went back to her rosemary. Inside, the house smelled like whatever she had put in the oven, and the particular kind of quiet that belongs to a space that is actually yours. Jordan changed out of his work clothes in the back bedroom. He moved through the house the way he had been moving through it for the past 8 months, deliberately, without hurry, touching things lightly. The kitchen counter he had refinished himself. The window above the sink with the long view into the backyard. The hallway where he had finally hung 3 things on the wall: a photo of his father, a photo of the crew from the hospital contract signing, and a small framed quote his father used to keep above his workbench that Jordan had carried in a box for 11 years without hanging anywhere. He had unpacked it and hung it the second week in the new house. He did not think about why it felt right to do it then. He just did it. The divorce had finalized 6 months ago. Fitch had called him on a Tuesday morning while Jordan was reviewing panel specs for the second hospital building. He had stepped outside, listened to the summary, thanked Fitch, and gone back inside. There was not much to feel by that point. The legal work had taken everything it was going to take, and what was left was just paper, numbers and signatures, and the formal closing of an account. Cassie's share of the marital estate had been reduced significantly by the financial misconduct offset. What remained after the HELOC liability and the civil settlement was a fraction of what she had planned on walking away with, and none of what Prentice needed her to bring. She had relocated to the south side of the city. She was selling real estate again at a smaller firm. Jordan knew this because the city was not that large, and Delphine knew people everywhere, and Delphine had told him once and then never mentioned it again. Prentice's situation had resolved the way situations always did for men who built on borrowed ground. The FCRA violation had produced a regulatory fine and a formal complaint with his licensing board. His mortgage broker certification remained under review. The creditor lawsuit was still pending. He and Cassie had not lasted past the first month after the conference room. The architecture of what they had built together only made sense when the house was still part of the plan, and without it, there was nothing to stand on. Jordan had thought about all of it less and less as the months went on, not because he suppressed it, but because there was genuinely less room for it. Webb and Ossie had closed the largest contract in the company's history. 3 buildings in a regional hospital system, a 2-year electrical infrastructure project that had required Jordan to hire 2 new master electricians and a project manager, and push the company to 19 people. He and Victor had lunch every Thursday. Nadia's firm handled all the accounting now, and she had once described their books as satisfyingly boring, which Jordan had taken as a high compliment. He was not with anyone. He was not in a hurry. He had learned the distance between patience and blindness. He had learned it the hard way, and he would not confuse them again. By the time he came back outside, the light had moved. Delphine had come around to the back porch and was sitting in one of the 2 chairs he had set out there in May. She had brought 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one when he sat down. Neither of them spoke. The yard stretched out in front of them, the garden running along the left fence line, the porch boards still warm from the day, the oak trees catching the last of the light. Somewhere behind the fence, a bird was working through the same 4 notes over and over. Jordan picked up his cup. He looked at the yard, the garden, the porch, the quiet. This is what I built, he thought. And this time, it's mine. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.